I get
It's
it.
cartoons. Looney and tunes go together really well. That's the vibe.
Looney and
The other.
Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
Nolan.
And this is episode 417. The question of the week: what game has caused you to cry?
Kenny, you go first. You go first.
Okay.
Well,
I'll go
it
first.
will also be
I
shocking,
know.
not shocking, but interesting as to how he interprets this.
It's gonna be Civ 2.
I struggled with this question, and it's so open-ended.
Yes.
I thought about games that just spoke to me emotionally. I'm definitely a if you tug the heartstrings, it'll show.
You
person.
are, yes.
But movies actually do that worse for me than games. Weirdly enough.
Worse?
Yeah,
Better?
I'll watch some. I mean, it depends on the outcome. If you want tears, then better.
You do.
Same.
You want to be emotionally moved?
Yeah, they're more effective for me at that front as a medium. Regardless, I settled on an answer, and my answer is a tears of frustration answer, not a tears of emotionally moved answer. And so I'm going to say Civilization 5, my attempts to beat it on Deity, the hardest level, as a one-city challenge.
How old were you? I don't answer that.
I don't know. This
52.
was probably
2 years ago.
This was since we've been podcasting.
Sure.
So sometime in the last decade.
Okay.
Dang.
Tears of frustration. That is a
difficult.
That's a point
and
that you can
got
get to.
super close sometimes, and then would have it taken from you. And those games are such a commitment of time.
Yeah, that's
to
painful.
get there, and having to try and grind it out numerous times. Oh, that one hurt.
I'm surprised you didn't say fishing in Hades, but maybe that was just another answer.
I learned. No, you taught me the trick,
So
and I'm
funny.
actually good at fishing there now. You just have to close your eyes.
Yeah.
Nolan.
Oh, yeah. I've never cried from a video game.
Wow, tough boy
Honestly,
over here.
I from movies, yes. Shows, yes. But not a game. What game would make? I don't know. What?
You're
Last
right.
of
You
Us?
only played Nintendo products. That's
No,
you play Mario and Zelda. There's no tears
I've
there.
played the games that you play.
He likes them shallow.
I don't have an answer.
You're telling me the end of Final Fantasy X that you and I have talked about multiple
I thought about
times.
that one. Didn't cry. I thought about that one. Did not cry.
All right.
Was just smiling from ear to ear. That was great. But no.
Okay. Nolan's tough.
Sorry.
I don't go in wanting to cry when I play video games, but I go in wanting to invest my emotion, all of it, whatever it is, into the game. I want to experience the game, the movie, the show in the realest way. So I go in selling myself to that.
Sure.
I will say that, I don't know if it's a harder sell there. I just think that, there's less, and I don't know. But there have been games that have
bigger
caused me...
disconnect in watching humans on a screen than fake humans. To me, that's what it is.
No, I get that.
All of that to say your answer is Shadow of the Colossus.
Hey.
Oh, is it?
It wasn't. I'd have to go back, but I'll give Valiant Hearts as my answer. A little known Ubisoft's
I don't know that
title, and it's actually a game set in. It's called Valiant Hearts, and then the subtitle is the Great War, I believe. So it's about World War I, and it's not a war game though. It's a side-scrolling puzzle-based adventure where you are playing a few different characters in a few different positions. There are a couple that are involved in the military, but some that is just in a town that's being taken over, and there's a dog, and there's
always a dog.
There's always a dog.
Yeah.
There's always a dog.
But the oh my goodness, the weight of that game, that is one of, again, little known and little talked about.
Yeah, it's heavy material.
I think people that have played it though, leave it with a memory and one that's carved into them because of the emotion that it brings up.
Great.
I kind of want to check it out. Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Did Brothers get you?
Oh yeah, for sure. The first, yeah. I mean, Ubisoft has some emotional
They also did Child of
tugging
Light?
ability. Yes.
Yeah, they do. They
Are they my
Yeah,
favorites?
I hope
they know how to play
not,
your
but-
heartstrings.
well, no, they do make a lot of games you like. A lot.
Now that I'm thinking about it, though, I don't think Brothers was actually Ubisoft, but it's close
think
I
enough.
don't think so.
Close
either.
enough. Close enough.
It's the same thing.
There are other games that brought me to tears, but I'm drawing a blank. Like in our retro game of the week, Toonstruck.
Overview.
Toonstruck is a point-and-click adventure game that came out for the PC in 1996. It was developed by Burst Studios and published by Virgin Interactive Entertainment. And the budget must have been outrageous.
It was outrageous.
It was outrageous and kind of not okay. Even by today's standards, they spent way too much money making this game. 8 million.
For the kind of game it was.
8 million?
I mean,
8 million plus.
We're in the days now where people are like, quadruple A titles are getting released.
Sure.
Tell me,
Which that's a whole conversation.
name one
for
point and
another
click
time.
that they spent
Right.
more than $8 million on.
But that's what I'm
Right.
saying. Point and clicks aren't those.
Right.
Point and clicks
They're
aren't
like-
those, and then like a lot of games aren't those. Even like indie games today, like
Well, sure,
one
yeah.
guy, for free made it. And
I mean,
sells-
Minecraft, I'm sure they invested money into it now, but right?
Now,
like,
but at
wasn't
the
that
time, yeah, no.
originally probably
it
less
was
than 8
just
million?
some project.
But this one, I would think that the majority of the funds went to the cast.
I would think.
There's not much else there. This is a start.
There was some technological heavy lifting as well going on for 1996. What they were trying to do. We'll get into where they spent their money as we talk about this. But yes, they got some big name folks.
This is a star-studded cast. You've got Christopher Lloyd, who is the protagonist in the flesh. You've got Ben Stein. You've got Tim Curry. Tons of notable voice actors, like the woman that did Dot from the Warner
Yeah.
siblings.
And Dan Castle, however you say his last name.
Right.
That's Homer Simpson.
Yeah, that's Homer Simpson. He's the purple guy that goes along with you, Flux.
Oh.
Yeah, big name voice.
Yeah,
actor.
just those are just to name a few. Like there's a dozen plus probably of notable voice actors of the time and in history, like legendary figures. And it's not the first point and click video game that we've played. Can you name a few of the point and click adventures we played? Wow, you went back in time.
That's my favorite one, I think.
Atlantis, The Lost Tales, wasn't that also? That was an early one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Similar to
we
Myst.
We did Curse of Monkey Island.
Is that the one we did? I know there's a whole series.
so.
I have
Didn't we
no
go-
mouth.
We did one of the Monkey Island
Yeah,
games,
yeah.
and I believe
I think
it
you're
was
right.
Curse of.
I have no mouth and I must scream.
You're right.
Yeah.
We've done a good
We've
amount.
played a lot, and there's that
We
broken
did one
sword.
of
Broken
the-
sword.
Did we do Broken Sword?
Yeah.
Is that the one we did some Nancy
Is
Drew,
Nancy
which are
Drew
sort of the
Blue
same,
Moon Canyon?
kind of.
They're all
We did did we do Day of the Tentacle or one of the things in that series? I don't know if it was Day of the
Magical Mystery
Tentacle
Mall,
itself.
kind of a point and click.
I don't know. No, that's
We've done
PlayStation.
actually an outsized number of point and click adventures.
You know what's unfortunate though? My point and click experience growing up was not with these adult games. They're not adult, but
Edutainment.
they were with like edutainment and
Goated.
yeah, and we haven't played any of those yet.
No, and they were
Right.
like unironically so fun.
So fun.
And you learned. I have really fond memories of Magical School Bus, point and clicks, and just like ones I couldn't even tell you the title. I just know I was in like Aztec tomb, clicking on stuff and making things happen.
Point and click is an interesting genre to talk about and is an interesting genre to revisit because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think largely the genre has morphed into something else because it is not as popular as it was in the mid 90s on the PC.
Yeah, it still exists, but when it exists like overtly to be sort of referential or nostalgic, I think. I mean, people try and still do it in like modern ways, but really it's just a sort of callback to that older era of gaming. And so it's like I get it. We do old games. That's what we do. So like I see the appeal for people, but it always feels a little bit more archaeological when we do this than other times, because these are sort of relics of a specific era of gaming, and I don't mind that, but I don't feel like they still exist today.
I don't know
At
what
least
it
not, like,
would have
in
even
the same way.
morphed into. Like I'm trying to draw a link with something modern, but they almost just exist.
So, some of the more like indie style sort of storytelling games I can kind of see. I think there's some VR experiences that are even still sort of just like move through and like interact with your environment.
Dustin,
and it's sort
is
of just like
Obra
touch
Dinn
and story.
that? Didn't you play that?
Yeah.
Kind
That's
of.
definitely a morphalization of
Okay.
the genre, which is a game that
but like a little to the left.
which is a game that I bought for Kenny for his birthday one time, and he tried it once and has never gone back to it.
Ouch.
No, I played quite a bit of it, but I wasn't smart enough for that game.
The story of Toonstruck is going to sound entirely made up, but I'm just going to say it. I did it in the first play, by the way. In the first play, I skipped, because you're watching a movie, and I skipped that and then just kind of regurgitated it afterwards.
You sounded like a madman.
Yeah, it sounds insane, and I'm about to do it again.
Okay.
Drew Blank, played by Christopher Lloyd, is an animator.
Blanc.
No, it's not. It's specifically Blank.
It should be Blanc.
Well, but then the pun doesn't work.
Sure, it still works.
Drew Blank is an animator and the creator of the Fluffy Fluffy Bun Bun Show. And
Great
as
title.
successful as the show has been, Drew is tired of it, and he wishes that he was working on his other creation, Flux Wildly.
Also a great title.
Which I think is probably a reference to...
Maybe.
to I almost
Back
said
to
the
the
Land
Future?
Before Time, to Back to the Future, which is
Land
also the
Before
Land Before Time, right? Blank's boss makes him work instead on the Fluffy Fluffy Bun Bun Show, which we'll just call the FFBBS now.
I'm not
we
gonna.
won't.
And
I'm not gonna say
it was
that.
on a stormy night, and Drew falls asleep at his drawing desk and wakes up being sucked into a world of his own creation.
Hate it when
And
that happens.
he has to help the Qtopia, is that what it's called? Out of the mess they're in, caused by the malevolent Count Nefarious, voiced by Tim Curry, alongside his weird purple globular friend, Flux Wildly.
Gameplay.
You had mentioned a bunch of voice actors in the overview, Dustin. You play as Christopher Lloyd. But his body.
His body.
His body.
His body.
Like he's
You play as
in
his body.
he's in the game. No, he's not. He didn't wear the like green costume with the,
No, 'cause
the
he's
dots
there.
on it, and they put him in the game. He's like, that's just the guy in the game. Like it is like a movie. So that right away is very strange and causes tons of limitations with what a normal point and click might do, because his animation is him walking. Like they videoed him walking physically. So that's what really makes this game so crazy. I mean, yes, the story, but like first out of the gate, like you're controlling a human inside of a video game. Didn't happen much. Probably some other game has done that, but this one, it's just that's how you're controlling your character. I mean, you're pointing and clicking, so it's the same. You're limited to the same format, but it's just weird.
To clarify just a little bit more, the world that you're seeing is animated. So
Cartoon.
like
Animated.
it's
Right.
cartoon animations. All the characters that you interact with are cartoon animated and in the style of what was popular at that time. So like Looney Tunes and other things like that. But
Well, a really good comparison, I think, is Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. Especially the second half when
Yeah.
you're in the animated place with the actual people,
Yeah.
as opposed to the first half where it's real people with the animation in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
but it goes more adult themed and more crass,
Right.
both in the humor and in the way and what the world is like and how you're interacting with it and the characters. There was a show that I cannot remember the name of,
I got you.
but it was something about a chicken robot chicken, funky robot.
Robot Chicken?
Is
that
it
what
called
you're talking
Robot Chicken?
about? On Adult Swim?
That sounds right. Robot Chicken.
Yes.
Okay, then I had it right.
I love that.
So for some reason, I
Very
didn't watch
surreal.
tons of it, but that kept coming to mind this week when
Yeah.
I was
Just like the humor.
Yeah, it's in that vein of bizarreness.
bizarre, aggressive,
Surreal. It's just, yeah.
and
like,
colors.
Robot Chicken's a bit, not a bit, it's a lot more crass than this ends up being, but it's the same, like,
This goes
style
crazy.
of humor.
There's some jokes that came out of left
This
field.
gets there, Nolan. Like,
I know, but, at the end, or later in the game, it gets...
yeah, dude, this gets pretty.
Well,
like,
when you look at the cover, it looks like a like Twisted Metal like horror game. Like it's funny that they originally meant for this to be for kids, and that's
They
what
changed
the cover
that.
is.
Right.
They changed
but then
it.
overtly
They changed.
evolved away from that. Yeah, this is a game whose humor is oriented at an adult audience for sure.
you are in this point and click game doing a lot of pointing and a lot of clicking, and you are moving your character around,
Sure.
venturing to a variety of bizarre locations, talking to weird characters, picking up items from the environment, solving the most obtuse puzzles, which has been a complaint of ours when it comes to these kinds of games.
Yeah,
and-
but this is something else.
Kenny, you gave me a little look of like, they're not obtuse. I had to play an organ to make a mouse dance so that my pal Flux could sneak attack on the mouse with a mallet device.
Bro,
Well, yeah,
what?
But the game did a great job of teaching you the fact that you needed to do those things. I've had issues with
You're not getting away with that.
I've had
Did a
issues
great
with
job.
puzzle-
You're not
do you
getting away
It
with that.
did.
Dude, okay.
I've had issues with puzzle games feeling like, oh man, that made no sense, or oh, I had to take such a leap, or oh, I have to just try every single possible combination here, or
Yes,
whatever
yes.
else. None of those things felt like the case for me. here.
No.
I
Okay,
don't know,
okay.
Kenny.
Please explain to me then, Kenny. What did you do with the mouse afterwards? You put him in your inventory, right? But then how did you use him later? Do you recall?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't know if I got to the point where I needed.
You might
to
not
use
have. I
him
think you
again.
probably did, but maybe not.
But did you have the thought, I'm going to use this mouse later?
Of course.
Okay, but that's fine. But I used the knocked out mouse, put him in the empty hand of a cart that moves from one area to the next. A peanut is in the other hand of the cart. One hand is empty. You put the mouse in that hand, and then you and then you had to have gotten the watering can from the trophy room to get a smelling liquid from the barn to put under the mouse's nose to wake it up.
Sure.
It's a really bad example.
I mean, that's how point and clicks kind of work. That's a fairly involved piece where you've gotten a lot of elements and are needing to put them together. But relative to other titles that we've played, where I've just been like, I don't feel like I know what's going on. And again, maybe it gets worse as you get way, way, way deeper into the game. But I felt like most of the time I had a good sense of this is what I should be doing in this puzzle, or this should be figure outable or not, or even, oh, this feels like something I'm going to need to come back to. And I don't know how always they communicated that. And I'm not saying they got it right in every single time, but I feel like it was handled way better here than in a lot of titles we've played.
I definitely don't. Let's talk about Myst, like, just as kind of the standard, which is an extreme comparison, of course, but that game gives you hints. There's logic behind items you're combining. There's logic behind the puzzles you're solving based on context clues. The context clues in this game are like the most insane thing you can think of. I mean, it's like a guy scribbled out his insane dream and you're supposed to make sense of it. They could have done that better by giving you some sort of resource, some sort of context or hints along the way, but playing an organ on a mouse is ridiculous and not okay.
You're obviously going to play the organ. When you play the organ, it goes to a really overt cutscene of the mouse dancing in place. It's the first time he hasn't scurried around somewhere else. You obviously
Listen.
need to use the organ's
Listen.
music to make the mouse stay where it is. Like, that's a terrible example.
At
'cause
least-
it hands it to you so directly.
At least you keep saying that. At least you have very clear interactions with the people in the world
Yes.
through icons at the bottom instead of words.
Okay, he's joking, right?
Which
You're joking.
yes, which make
Thank
really stupid sense. So one of the examples is when you meet a new character, you need to talk to them, but they represent that as an ice cube.
Sure.
Kenny, what does that mean though? But like really, what would you
Well,
think?
yeah. I mean, it took me a second in the game, but I realized very quickly that I'm ice breaking with these characters.
You mean breaking the ice?
He's gonna
I'm
upset
breaking
me
the ice.
the
Yeah.
more we go into this episode. I think.
I'm all for Kenny liking it.
That's fine, but
But here's the thing: with point and clicks, the struggle is to make things make sense, and in a world that intentionally is chaotic and absurd, the puzzles and what you have to do are as equally chaotic and absurd. Look. We don't have to stay on the mouse thing as an example. I was giving that because that's an early puzzle that is kind of silly, but there are far greater sins than that throughout this game. Nolan is mentioning one thing that is just another thing that is just not clear because it's going for absurd. I eventually got the ice breaking, and as you continue to have conversation, the image of it is melting so that you're running out of like topics to talk about or whatever.
Things to talk
I don't
about.
like it.
Yeah.
The whole thing is absurd is my point. And so when they present the game as absurd, the puzzles follow suit. And I've got to strongly disagree, Kenny, that they are intuitive or make any kind of sense. They're crazy.
That's so crazy to me because I've had that complaint with so many point and clicks that we've had. And again, maybe as you get way, way further into the game, but like I put a decent time into sort of starting this game and never felt like I didn't have something to do or know a current problem to be solved or feel like I couldn't be moving towards solving their problem. Now, there were a lot of open-ended, I'm going to need to come back to this, or, oh, I need to remember that or
Sure.
solve this things to keep track of. But, like, you got your giant Mary Poppins bag that, is going to hold all the stuff you need.
It's a D&D bottomless bag. That's the better comparison.
Nah, Mary Poppins,
D&D.
bro. And
Poppets, bro.
yeah, and you're gonna fill it up with stuff you need and
Rats.
Trial and error. Yes, you're gonna have to
Boogers.
backtrack some. You're gonna have to remember a thing that happened here, and like you gotta pay attention and put yourself in the world. And I don't know it. 4 point and clicks. I don't feel like this is the one that commits that sin the worst. Not by a long shot.
Dustin, I think like this game works for his brain. I think like there's something about how they developed this that his brain's like, yeah, I got it.
I mean, I peaked in 1996, so maybe that was
Maybe
the
that's
audience they were going for.
I would be interested in watching him work through some of this game,
Maybe I'll stream it some for you this week.
but
don't.
I wouldn't because of how slow these kinds of games tend to be.
Yeah, and it's worse here because, like I mentioned, it is Christopher Lloyd in the game, so you have to watch him walk across some big rooms and areas that is pointless, and I can't stand. I'd rather like hit an arrow to like jump to the next room. I don't need to see him walk all the way and take his time.
The walking didn't bug me too much. I did feel like some of the dialogue was a little bit too long. I wish they had edited. They did, I don't know, they did teach you early on that there is a skip button, which I would use anytime I got into a dialogue I'd already heard, which was helpful. If you try and like re-listen to stuff, that's going to be really obnoxious. And as you're talking to these people, like you're like, are they going to say something else or not? And they go back into a spiel they've already done. It's nice to be able to skip that. They did give you an option to do that, though. But I do think the talking pieces of things could have just used an edit.
Here's my conundrum, and I wonder if anyone else is like this. This is serious. This is something that I have to deal with. When I play video games, when I finish video games, for example, I sit and I let the entire credits roll because as a sign of respect to the people that worked on the game. I don't read all of it necessarily, but I feel like I need to do that because they just gave me a good gaming experience.
Okay, I like that.
When I play a game like this, there is a significant part of me that it hurts to zoom through the dialogue that I can read a lot quicker than they're speaking it. But especially with a game like this with legendary voice actors,
right? Yeah.
There's a part of me that I feel like I've got to respect that. They worked on that. They recorded that. I need to listen to that.
I get it, and I wasn't skipping things the first time through.
Yeah, no,
I
I'm
really
not.
do think that's a tool for like second playthroughs
Sure.
or whatever else. It's a little bit wordy. You need to be in a patient gamer kind of mood,
which is rare nowadays.
Yeah, if you've got 2024 gamer ADHD, if like the full on social media has just corrupted your attention span to be completely short.
Baby Gronk Rizzler.
Which it has for me, but I was fighting and channeled my inner 1996, child. You might struggle here.
Dustin, with Red Dead Redemption 2, yes, I feel that. Like, I want to hear every little dialogue from the voice actor. I want to have those interactions out of respect because it's art. But in this game, I'm talking to a scarecrow as Christopher Lloyd, who I'm just like, why are you... Like, which already a random choice.
Who's got a fun character, a carecrow, rather, who's got fun, like, personality, who's gonna tell you things that are funny. It's not like these are throwaway lines. There's a ton of humor packed in here.
Yes.
They're telling you clues as to what you need to be doing as they move on with things, even if some of them are a little bit like obtusey riddles. I've sometimes had to go back and like play something like again a second or third time to like catch a clue, but that's the whole point.
Yes, but you've got to understand you have to understand where I'm coming from in that for me, none of that felt worth it because of just, I kept asking myself, what am I doing? What am I doing? What's my goal? Do I care enough? And
that doesn't shock me. Like, I literally spent the whole week going, Nolan's going to hate this game so much.
And I definitely didn't think he was going to love this. I didn't think that.
Love is strong.
If any of us did, it would be
this isn't an imperfect game. I'm not trying to oversell. I'm a little bit more shocked though that Dustin seems closer to your camp of frustrations here. I felt like there were some things he would be a little bit more likely to appreciate.
I think he does. I think at the end we'll see when we get there. But like hearing him talk, all of it makes sense to me. And I think maybe he has a little more respect in that he wanted to listen to all the dialogue. I don't have that, so there you go.
Let's talk about some other like practicalities for point and click that we've had qualms with in the past. Pixel hunting sometimes is a major problem.
True.
I didn't feel like that was too bad here. They did a pretty good job
fair.
of
You're
giving visuals and interactables that seemed like they were going to be important and doing really large contextual mouse over behavior so that you could tell if you were going to move or what you were going to do or that something was interactable or not. And that was nice. And even just generally being fairly mouse driven as opposed to like forcing you to learn a bunch of like keyboard shortcuts or something felt very accessible. And most of it was that case. There's a few things you need to learn to do if you want to skip dialogue or save your game or whatever else. But mostly you're just cruising with just your mouse, which feels nice to me.
It does. And I do agree that, the hand or the icon of your mouse changes when you go over an item that is interactable. And it highlights maybe, and even a word pops up on the screen. So, like, it is very clear. I wasn't having to pixel hunt. But what I was having to do was go through every option. And that's not fun to me. Like, I didn't want to do this, but I felt like I had to talk to every individual because they might be important or might give me something or might unlock something. And go through every dialogue option too. And there's 52 interactable characters. And so with multiple dialogue options that some don't even unlock until you have you do one, which unlocks another and another. So that, and then with the items, there's no way that all 20 of the items that I've collected so far in my bag are going to be needed. Maybe, which is also absurd, but that I have 20 items in my bag and that I'm either going to have to use them in some crazy way or that I'm not going to use them. Both of those feel bad. Like, I feel
like you will use them in some way, probably.
A lot of them you're probably going to use, but they are pretty overt fairly early on, I guess depending on the order of how you do things, about just straight up showing you this game is going to include some red herrings. Like, it literally... That's
not okay.
Gives
red
you
herrings are fine, but like...
Red herring. It's like, you gotta just be aware.
I didn't make that.
But I'm saying, like, throwaway
connection.
items are not okay. Like, especially if it's this loony. Because then you just have no logic to base it off of, and so what?
It's the lack of logic. I get
it's
it.
Cartoons. Looney and tunes go together really well. That's the vibe.
Looney and
the other thing, back to the, like,
future
hunt the pixel aspect and it not being here. It's because this is a really unique point click for many reasons, but in the sense that a lot of the gameplay felt more like a storytelling experience, hand-holdy storytelling versus I'm on my own, I'm Nancy Drew solving a mystery, like needing to click and interact with my environment a lot. It's extremely dialogue heavy compared to a lot of other point and clicks. And the puzzles are a bit more like, I mean, they're crazy, but they aren't the same as other point and clicks in the sense that there's like a ton of backtracking involved, and again, the logic thing. So that's where I think this one's so different, is that it's a storytelling point and click, and the other ones I've played haven't been as much. There's a story in those, but it's background.
Yeah, it's a fair thing to point out that there's a spectrum there, and I do think that this one is a little bit more story heavy, which is why I didn't mind like talking to all of the characters.
No, Dustin, the story's not good. It's
getting character, and I was getting context, and I get the frustration with the dialogue and it being slow and the character moving slow, but I also felt like they did a pretty good job of pacing you. You didn't stay in one room for a super long period of time. Like, you'd move into an area, you'd do the stuff you needed to do, and you'd move on to something else. And I always felt like I could find something else that needed to be done. And sometimes in these games, I'm completely confused. Like, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to go back to even? Like, what? And
I think that's good.
I felt like
that's
it was
important.
a little more obvious here. So, I don't know.
The confusing aspect in figuring it out's the rewarding part of these games.
Right.
That's not here.
It needs to make sense.
It needs to make sense is my problem.
And this makes sense in a Looney Toony absurdity? I'm going to go with it. A Looney Toony absurdity kind of way.
It does.
And 2/3 of us don't think like that.
Aged.
Dustin, you mentioned in the overview that this genre died out or maybe evolved in some way. And I predict that it's going to come back through the indie scene, and it might look different. But I think I think it's been long enough that people will start discovering it that are younger, and those that are familiar with it and miss it will want more of it. And there might be a little bit of a resurgence, because I could see it happening. I don't know, because there's a charm about these games, not this game, sorry. The genre that I find, and I've been a big critic of these on the podcast. I think we've played a lot of bad ones, to be fair. And maybe that's where some of that comes from. But there's something about them that I think could work in a modern setting somehow.
I would be all for that, because I like the idea of them. It's so unfortunate that I feel like so few of them are done well. But yeah. I also feel like, man, so many of them are a product of their time. And so, like, if I would have played them then, I would have had... Like, I think we mentioned at the top of the episode that, like, there are some edutainment ones that I have fond memories of. Maybe if I went back, I would feel some of the same things.
I think you would. I think it would be heavy nostalgia, though, because the games don't function particularly well now, and some of them are impossible to play because they were on Windows 98 or something like that. So it's like really hard to get that OG experience. It's nice that this one you can. It was a DOS game, but you can get it on GOG and Steam, very playable, which we were able to do.
Oh yeah, which GOG, we've had a relationship with GOG for many years now. We unfortunately somewhat rarely have well, I don't know, somewhat rarely.
I love when we get PC titles and I get the excuse.
But when we get older PC titles, the majority of the time they are on GOG, as long as people still want them and play them. And GOG is always kind enough to offer us a copy to play, to review, to talk about. And so that's where you should go and get it. And it's on GOG for $10. It might be on sale right now. But that's where you should get it. And playable. Like, it's one of those that which is so crazy because it's DOS. Like, it's an old one where if it wasn't kept up and maintained, that it would be super hard to play. But GOG makes sure that that's super
double
easy.
Click it, ran fine, was able to play. So that that's a point in the positive.
That problem that sometimes is a problem has been solved
for this game.
And thank you, GOG, for being part of that solution.
And I wonder why. I wonder if it's because this game was really loved by people. Because again, we talked about the budget and the cast. It's very unique in that sense. Tim Curry, are you serious? Like a legend. Why is he in this game?
Steph's brother.
I have the sense that it was fairly well received, but even being well received, this game did not
do well.
In fact, I'm pretty sure it was a huge financial loss for them.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting story. You should go and read about it. It's not surprising when you hear about the amount of money that they spent to make this game, and the fact that it was 1996. Like, you're competing against up and coming like
N64
new
coming up,
things in gaming and in PC gaming. Point and click adventure is on the way out at this point.
It was maybe needed to prove that you can't buy gamers with Hollywood
talent
style marketing. Like, you can't. It's kind of cool. Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk. Oh, cool. I like Keanu Reeves. It's not going to make me buy the game. The game needs to be good, and this is a great. I'm glad it flopped. Honestly, I'm glad it flopped.
See, I feel like completely different. I feel like they spent too much. I feel like they could have told the same story probably without the gimmick of doing the whole live action thing. And it would have been almost as good a game, like you just do the Monkey Island thing. So I get that, but you got to try new things. And, like successful movies had played on this trope at this point, and I get them attempting it, and I don't even mind it. I think it makes for a kind of unique little experience. I don't think it's one that would be done in the same way or whatever else, but I don't know. I feel like the product here came out good, and how they made it was more the problem.
It's interesting because the graphics age because of Christopher Lloyd as a human.
Right. Not the environment.
Not because of the animation.
Not the animation.
That's so weird.
Like, I think the animation's great, honestly.
It is.
Personally, I love it.
I hate looking at it.
Done.
Yeah, it's
Sure,
insane.
it's got a very distinct style.
It is garish and will make your eyes bleed. Is what I'm trying to say.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah, but on purpose.
Of course, on purpose, and so ages well. In although I do think that's a particular audience that enjoys that kind of flavor. But that's not where it ages. It ages where, and it had to age originally with this because, as Nolan said way long ago in the episode, that they recorded, I would assume, Christopher, I'm going to call him Chris, in front of a green screen, and they were like, walk, bend
Turn
down,
around.
reach out on the other side, put your hands up.
Say this specific line. Do this specific motion that you're going to
he definitely
need to
went
do.
like this, and they put whatever words they wanted to. But like he just opened and closed his mouth, and because like it didn't go along with it. But that, and maybe they were fine with it. Maybe that was part of the quote unquote charm or quote unquote character or quote unquote quirkiness or whatever they were going with. Because
quit with the quote.
It looks absurd, but again, hey, maybe that was intentional.
Well, okay, so Chris Lloyd walked so that Christopher Judge in God of War could run.
No.
I think for 1996,
He literally
for
walked.
the technology they had, I think they did about as good a job as you could do. It's not great.
It should have all been
definitely
animated.
Feels sort of out of place. They could have done it with animation. It would have been cheaper and could have been just as effective, I think, have him be a voice actor. But if you're going to do it with the limitations and the technology that they have, I felt like they sold it better than they could have. It feels janky at times. It's certainly not like it's going to just be flawless.
So 90s. Everything
Yeah,
about
it's very
him
very 90s.
in it, the environment is so 90s.
Absolutely. Even the actors that they got, everything about it reeks of that mid 90s PC era,
Yeah.
which is part of probably why it resonates with me.
I think the music falls in line there too. It's garish. It's
But fits.
sure,
So
but it's
what?
not pleasing.
So what if it fits?
Yeah, like if you want a copy of, we already said digitally, $10, go get it. But if you actually want physical copies, Kenny, which I believe it's multi-part disc, by the way, probably
I'll just
because of
download
the movie
The
that
movie
they have
that's on
there.
it, there's literal acting scenes between
Right.
humans on it.
It's a lot of data.
It's only $6 used or loose, but it is $70 new, which
Pretty cheap for a collector thing. I
but
would
still,
I would
there's
spend that.
you've got people out there that have collected this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, because it's that kind of like, why does this exist? And it's
If
got
you
a
gave
fun
me an
story behind
unopened
it.
Copy of this game, I'd be stoked about it.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. Nolan, what did you think about Toonstruck, your new favorite game?
It's bad. It is not the worst game we've played, not even close. It's funny, since we started doing our end of year tier lists, I start to think about that when I'm like, summarizing my thoughts on a game. I'm like, it ain't D tier. It's not terrible. This is four
Stars
people.
out of 5.
No, this is for 4 people. Kenny's one of them. I don't know the other people. But like it's just really bizarre from the content of the game to the genre they chose with point and click to just the backstory behind it and the cast and the fact, like, all that's crazy. And then I find out how much they spent on the game and I'm like, oh, it's like, it hurts me. It's like finding out a friend took out like a personal loan a long time ago, thought it wasn't a big deal, and now they're like so in debt. Like, I'm like, dude, glad that wasn't me. You do not need to play this. There are better point and clicks, way better. And Christopher Lloyd's not going to make this one good for you. So, no way. No way.
That's one no. Kenny?
In my notes, I said I'm going to shock myself. After talking through it and realizing sort of the stance and what everybody's heard, I don't know that it's a shock, but I'm going to give this game NGP status. I had fun with it. I'm still not 100% why I went on that side of the line, because Nolan is right. It's an imperfect game. And the unique parts of this game aren't the things that inherently did a lot for me. I feel like the real people kind of gimmick is fine here, but it wasn't necessary. You can do the same humor and interesting puzzles and just stick to normal animation and graphics. Like, they could have just done a Monkey Island here and it would have been fine. But I still fairly disagree with a lot of Dustin's stance on like the gameplay pieces of things. I felt like difficulty was pretty good here. Pacing was relatively well balanced. Puzzles seemed generally solvable to me and not too overly complex. There was some complexity, but stuff that you could figure out. It gave you the clues you needed. And the tone and the humor mostly landed for me. It was a little bit full of itself. It tried a little bit too hard at times. It was certainly a little bit heavy-handed. I certainly wish they tightened up the dialogue a little bit. If they did a re-release, I would hope they Reader's Digest versioned this a little, just to make it a little bit more palatable. And I have a few other very specific complaints. But overall, it worked for me. I get that the genre is a hard no for a lot of people, just as a concept. People just won't play it. But it won my heart, and I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know that I will, but I wouldn't be surprised if I loaded up my saved game and worked on this one a little bit at a time and continued to play it some. Because I had fun.
This
So,
is
yeah, in GP.
this is Kenny's like new Steam Deck game. Think about that. He's gonna load it up on.
No,
the Steam
I have
Deck.
a current Steam Deck game, and it's Deep Rock Galactic Survivors, and I don't want to talk about it.
I'm proud of you, Kenny, for finding enjoyment in something so unenjoyable. Like the thought experiment that Nolan brought up, or at least for me, thought experiment of what would it look like if this genre did return today? Because I feel like I like this genre, but I dislike so many of the games in this genre. If done well, I like adventure and storytelling. I could play a game where there's gameplay light and story and character dense and rich. And I think that's something that's missed in some of these games. And this is one where, on top of the complaints I've already had, the presentational style is just something that does not agree with me. It's like, I don't know, like, is Tang kicking, like, there was a like 90s surge Tang. There's all these things that middle school boys loved, and it's aggressive, in your face, irreverent, with and all of that is here with theme and dialogue. Yes, that didn't work for me as a child.
I like Ren and
It's not.
Stimpy.
It's not Tang. It's Sunny Delight. But I get. But
It's
I get
Sunny
it.
D.
Look,
This game is Sunny D.
even as a kid, I was like, I'm above that, and I still feel like I'm above that. It presentationally doesn't work for me. I love Chris, and he gives a great performance. Ben Stein everybody gives a great performance.
Oscar worthy.
But I don't know about that. But it's all just in your face, and then it's obtuse, and I did not enjoy my experience with it this week, and very few of you will, in my opinion. And so I say no, which means Toonstruck is not New Game Plus certified. But what did you think? On our YouTube poll, 7% agree with Kenny, saying yes, it's worth playing today.
Thank you.
Double rock finger. 2% said no, go play something else. More agree with Kenny than with us. But do you understand what that means? Actually, 91% have, of course, never played this game before.
Have of course not played this.
Many of our community played it for the first time or revisited it with us, and they wrote in. I'll include a few of their thoughts here. Garlisle said Toonstruck is fine. It has a few issues, some easily missed interactables, a bit much backtracking, awkward audio balance, color-blind, unfriendly puzzles, and some dialogue that is twice as long as it needs to be. Also, the fish puzzle might be one of my least favorites I've encountered in the genre, but while it's no Sam & Max or Monkey Island, it still has a unique flavor, a fun plot twist, and I don't think there's anything else that tried what it did stylistically. Thank God. Not my first recommendation in the genre, but one I respect despite its flaws.
It's one to look at in a museum and be like, whoa, that's interesting.
I'm not going to that museum.
And I'll just hang out there and spend the night.
It's your museum. Okay.
Night at the museum?
Shane, that's a Night at the Museum reference. Shane said, this is the first time I really stuck through a point and click. It's really fun solving what the game might be thinking, even though it's definitely hard to realize sometimes. Figuring out what you needed to think with cartoon logic here was definitely the key to this game. I used universal hint system rather liberally at some points, but I also solved plenty on my own, so I don't feel too bad for taking the helping hand. As for NGP, I feel like this deserves it. What's happening? Wonderful 2%. For anyone to try the genre. It introduces itself fairly well. A native hint system would be better, of course, but a recommendation of UHS works about as well, the universal hint system. The wacky story is also a fun time, and at around 9 hours of playtime, I think the price of admission is worth it.
UHS? This is the University of Hella Stupid.
That's really good, and you did that pretty quick. I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
Lyrica said, this game was first introduced to me as a trailer on a Virgin Interactive sampler disc, which I still have. That came with the 11th hour when my dad bought it. For years, I begged him to get this game for me as I loved the old LucasArts adventure games. Eventually, we found it in a bargain bin years later. For this playthrough, I will admit I had an unfair advantage as I'd played this many times over the years, so my playthrough was pretty direct and not too long. Despite its age, it still looks fairly good even on my modern flat screen monitor, at least until you get to the FMVs, which sadly show significant age due to low resolution. The fact that they were able to get such names like Christopher Lloyd, Ben Stein, Tim Curry, Dan Castellaneta amongst a decent big name cast is mind-blowing. Overall, I really enjoyed this most recent playthrough and still keep it high on my list of best adventure games and hope others enjoy it.
Wow-wee.
I love how vindicated I feel right now.
Nolan,
best adventure
so
game.
far we're in the minority.
I don't care. I know I'm right.
Cecil said, finally, an adventure game can get away with puzzles operating on pure moon logic, or should I say cartoon logic. Nyuk, nyuk, nyuk. I always liked a game that makes me laugh, and I definitely admire the ambition and charm of this game, even if some of the puzzles were on the more obnoxious end. And the second disc, Nefarious's Castle, was obviously where they started running out of time and budget. And while the star-studded cast was an absolute delight, it's obvious why that budget got so high to the point where even if it was a success, if it was as successful as it should have been, I don't know if they could have ever justified the sequel they so badly wanted to do, and I so badly want it in my hands.
Did they really want to? Why does everyone like this game, dude?
Because it's a great little game. Great and strong. It's a good little experience.
Good little
That's
experience isn't
still
great.
too
Isn't good
strong.
enough for me.
That's still too strong.
Good little.
Nolan and I are putting aside Toonstruck, and
I may not.
We are not going to be randomly selecting this week because it's time once again for a Patreon poll. Stats by Shane. TM.
That's by Shane.
Console that was most submitted in this Patreon pool belongs to the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Wow.
Which is good. And
That's
also,
good.
I don't think that's
great.
typical.
That's not typical. It's usually
typical.
a modern console.
And I love that.
PC is second, followed by PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2 is
PC
awful
is
up there.
That.
PC entries always surprise me. It's higher than I think.
Here's the thing that is we're probably going to see more and more because as the time moves forward, PC becomes better and more viable. Like that's such an interesting thing.
That's true.
The most submitted game, most people just did their own thing again, which that's what the Patreon pool has devolved into. There's no teamwork anymore. But Fable with 5 votes, only 5.
Ooh, people have been working on Fable
for a long time.
The Fable curse isn't going to be lifted. I'm just going to go ahead and call it.
And then with 4 votes or entries each, we've got Demon's Soul, System Shock 2, and Silent Hill 2.
Did you say Demon's Souls?
I said Demon's Soul.
That's eligible.
That is eligible.
Oh my!
I believe it just became eligible with like its Asia release or something. Like it's on
PS3.
So,
it's gonna be difficult to play if it gets picked, but I want to play that game.
Oh, hold on. Is there not like a re-release of it?
It's hard to emulate.
Interesting. Okay.
Stably.
We've also got games in here like Halo 2 from the Kentucky Kid, just a director episode. We've got The Sims Bustin' Out by Corey. Megatroid has Donkey Kong Country and Twilight Princess. Ooh, we haven't done a Zelda game in a minute, have we?
I would be stoked about either of those or Halo 2.
Hit randomize.
Like, come on, y'all.
Yippee submitted Super Mario Bros. 2. But the real one,
yeah.
or not the real one, I guess.
Ours.
Right. The American Super Mario Brothers 2. I'd love that.
We've got a lot of other great games and bad games and fine games in here. And from your Patreon submitted lists, we are randomizing now. The game that we'll be playing for the next 7 days was developed by United Game Artists and published by Sega.
What?
For the Dreamcast and PlayStation 2.
Okay.
It was released in Japan in 2001 and made it Global in 2002.
Okay.
All right.
Don't like it though so far.
I'm optimistic.
Dreamcast scares me as well.
Has been ported and expanded and re-released on more modern consoles.
That's a good sign.
And it is a musical rail shooter.
Okay.
And it's a popular one. This was submitted one time
Oh wow.
by Ted.
Rip Fable. Thanks,
And
Ted.
Game that we're going to be playing for the next 7 days is called Rez.
Yeah.
R-E-Z.
Yeah. This is always okay. So we've played some rail shooters, even
Yeah.
a recent one,
We've played
and
even-
this one was brought up a ton. It's that cylinder game Kenny liked.
With that is kind of musical based
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I forgot what it's called.
Everyone did. It's totally tubular or something like that, or is
That's it. It's totally tubular. Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
not it, but
It's
it
not
was
what it's
something
called,
like that.
But it was
like a pun.
the one in it.
Okay, this will be an important game to play. Are we playing Dreamcast? Are we playing PS2? It
Ooh,
doesn't
that's
matter.
a good question. I'm gonna say it doesn't matter. It'll probably be easier for us to play on PlayStation 2.
I think so too. And I think that's where a lot of people probably experienced it.
But
Okay.
I would imagine that on any of its consoles, even on its like re-released with PlayStation 4, PC,
yeah, faithfully, you
PlayStation
think.
5, that's probably close to it, the same experience. So
All right.
find a copy of Rez, played along with us and Ted's this next week.
Join our Discord server, discord.gg/newgameplus.
We want to say thank you to those of you who support us on patreon.com. You help us to continue bringing you the highest quality retro gaming podcast in the history of the galaxy. So, to our director level supporters, Bro Jim, Super Hyper, The Kentucky Kid, Siegfried, Justified 01, and Smashing Bricks Retro Gaming Podcast, thank you so much for your overwhelming vote of confidence. Thank you to a few folks who are patrons for the first time this week. Nick, Steamed Hams from Albany, and Jeffrey, who has upped their contribution as well. And we want to say thank you to the many of you who are producer-level supporters, including Alex, Alias X, Marlon, Antonin, Arlen Yuki, Ben, Craig, Dustin's 5 O'Clock Shadow, Garlyle, Alex, Harold, J. Robert, Jake, Jared, Jordan, Joey, Justin, Kenny's Beard, Glenn, Corey, Levi, Maxima, Megatroid, Miss Muso, Not Enough Dog, Riff, Sagen, Shane, Shauna, Stephen Fox, Psycho Mantis, Thomas Turtle, Unbelievable, and Zion. You guys are the best. Thanks for your support.
You can follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. All of those links are in our show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Our video episode was edited by our friend Dylan. Our audio episode was edited and produced by our friend Dan Willett. Join us next week as we play Rez. Until then, I'm still Fluffy Bun Bun.
I'm still stuck inside a cartoon and loving it.
I'm Carecrow.
And this has been New Game Plus.